Yeah, hello everyone. I decided to try and make this stream at a more acceptable hour because streaming at 3 a.m. is not the right way to go, I suppose. So I hope you're all having a good evening, and if you're not, I'm going to do my best in order to entertain you with a couple of interesting stories that I have found. Also, by the way, Sargon of Akkad won his lawsuit against Aquila, obviously. I'm probably going to have to make a video on that. But right now he is cocking. He doesn't want to countersue. You see, the way things work in my country, and my country is the bastion of sanity in the world. You can ask any Romanian in the chat to confirm. If you sue someone, a civil lawsuit, that means that that person is going to have to pay for a lawyer, pay for the trips in order to get to the court, especially if it's in another town, pay for the hotel room, right? There's expenses that need to be covered when you sue someone. And the party who loses has to pay the expenses to the party who wins. And in this case, Aquila obviously said that Sargon of Akkad violated, he's the violator, didn't violate her, no, violated her right of intellectual property. And he sued him, right? So now he had to travel all the way to the United States. He had to pay for the traveling expenses and the hotels and all of that. So I'm trying to convince Carl to sue the woman. Sue the woman, Carl. Sue her. And he's like, oh no, I don't believe in karma, but in these cases you shouldn't press your luck. Press it! Press the luck, Carl. Press the luck. It's like, what on earth are you not? No, seriously. I mean, the importance of suing her is not to necessarily. Like, first of all, this is a woman which said he doesn't care about the fact that he has children. It's like it's not her problem. You know, the empathy was radiating from her. Like, I woke up one day and I felt like a huge dose of radiation. I thought I would turn into Spider-Man. And I had to check, what is this radiation? Oh, it's empathy radiating from Aquila, obviously. I was like, oh, okay, now I know. And she doesn't care about the fact that Sargon has children and he might have to pay, like, I don't know how much she was asking, like tens of thousands of dollars for a YouTube video. Like, just. So now he needs, he needs to take action. Sue the woman, Carl. Sue the woman. There's ice on the roads. Bring me the salt of Kami's suffering. Also, fees can be awarded. It happens all the time, says the field. Man, speaking of ice on the roads, what is wrong with British people? Like, seriously, what has to ask this question? And me and Arch were talking about this, him being in Norway and me being in Romania. Both are nations that are incredibly cold. And the moment a snowflake happens to fall on a British highway, you have car crashes. And I'm like, how is this possible? And then I found out, okay, because I actually talked with a British person and I found out these people, they don't slow down. It's like I told them, look, if you see that the streets are glass, okay, like you notice that you're seeing your reflection in the street. Why don't you slow down? Like drive, I don't know, 20 miles per hour. It's like, oh, how can I drive 20 miles per hour? Oh, that's so slow. Motherfucker, like, you can't brake. Like, you're not going to be able to take a turn properly. Slow the fuck down. It's like, these people do not understand. Like, let alone the concept of putting chains on their tire is something so outlandish, so unfamiliar, so bizarre. They're looking at it and it's like, wow, chains on my tires? Whoa. Honestly. You know, like, people from Britain, they look at snow as if it's an unnatural thing. Look, even... Wait. Why is that a member of Antifa has a 4x4? You know, like, why are the Antifa in my country richer than the Antifa in yours, huh? Because I did see some of the automobiles that I managed to see. What was it? In Berkeley, I believe. In Berkeley, yeah. So it was a little bit interesting. Let's see some of the questions from the chat. What's my opinion on the label center-right modern adopted by the USR? Like, man, I do not follow Romanian politics. See, I need to bring you on a stream to keep me up to date to what happens in Romanian politics. The only thing that I know about Romanian politics is that at one point people wanted to impeach the Romanian president, Traian Băsescu, and they had many reasons to do so. But then the European Union comes in with Angela Merkel saying, oh, well, she's very concerned about the democracy in Romania. And the US ambassador, I believe his name was Butcher, he got very concerned as well. And all of a sudden, even though people went to impeach the president in record numbers when it comes to the vote, he didn't get impeached. And it's like, okay, well, that's a little bit bizarre, you know? I'm like, well, you know, like, okay. And then you also had the time where we were talking about the immigration crisis. Migration crisis, right? It was like the picture with the dead kid on the beaches of Greece that for some reason shouldn't exist on YouTube because it violates so many community guidelines, but the mainstream media was able to show it. Perfect. Okay. So the Romanian president at the time, I think it was, it was the current one, Werner. Klaus Werner Iohannis. Klaus Werner Iohannis goes to the television and says he disagrees. He heavily disagrees with Romania taking immigrants, not because they wouldn't be able to house them, because he could make a barrack somewhere, but the main issue that he has is that the economy wouldn't be able to integrate them. It's like Romania is a poor country and we already have our problems. You know, bringing people in here would be a significant toll on the Romanian economy. And I was like, you know what? I don't care if I agree or disagree, but this is the man's opinion. You know, he went on national television, he stated his goals, and I'm like, okay, you know, this is what we're going forward with. Perfect. The next day, he gets a call. Gets a call from Angela Merkel, like, and he is summoned. The Romanian president is summoned. He's summoned to Brussels. And, you know, like, they drew the pentagram, and he arrived from... And he comes back into Romania. And it's like, yeah, I talked with Angela Merkel, and we discussed the quotas. It's like, motherfucker, what do you mean you discussed the quotas? Like, yesterday, you were saying that you're not taking them because the Romanian economy... and today you're telling me about quotas. Like, what exactly has changed? Has the Romanian economy improved? Are we changing the way that the national currency works? Like, what? Yeah. So at this point, I'm like, okay, why exactly would I care about Romanian politics? What is the point? What is the point? If regardless of how I vote, it seems that whenever there's an actual important issue, you know, an issue that affects people, outside sources are dictating things in the country. So that is like one of the things that pissed me off. The second thing that pisses me off, imagine if in the United States, and I don't know the legislation there, but imagine this, right? Imagine if, let's say, you have the elections for the House of Representatives, and you have 80% Republican and 20% Democrats. And after the elections, like the next day, you know how they do it in football when a football player moves from Barcelona to another club? You would have like the overwhelming amount of Republicans moving over to the Democrats, and now the percentages have changed. The percentages have shifted. It's actually very similar to what happens in the United Kingdom. Like in the United Kingdom, you had a big number of Tories, right? And from them, a lot of them defected over to Labour and Independence, and now you had the Tories, which won the elections, being in the minority in the parliament. Now, this is a very weird situation for the United Kingdom. But in Romania, it's like every single election. So I'm wondering, like, why on earth do I vote? It's like, I go there and I put the stamp on the party that I want to win, and they get like a certain percentage, and then people from the party that I voted move to other parties. It's like, how is that normal? Like, what is this? Yeah? And it's not only that, right? Because when you go to vote, you don't vote for a person. Because you get a list of names, many of whom I've never heard about in my life. But let's say, you know, I like Johnny. Johnny is on the top of the list. So I vote for him. But I don't like Marcel. Marcel is a piece of shit. I don't want him. But I have to vote for him because you vote for the list. So it's like, I genuinely do not see the point. When I hear about Romanian democracy, it makes me laugh. Did I hear about cuckolding cases in Romania? Well, you know, I'm not really that proficient with the Romanian sex scene, but I was watching yesterday. Don't ask me why, okay? Like, I genuinely had nothing to do. I wanted to go to bed, but I couldn't sleep. So I decided to watch the new Harley Quinn show. So this is what I found. Like this is the new Harley Quinn, and you have Clayface here, and this is from the actual show, right? Like the translations are something that I made up. Was it the first time Clayface got cuckolded? Then you got this one, because she's not a misogynist troll that should be living in a well. And this is, I guess Poison Ivy is trying to get Harley Quinn and this guy who called Wonder Woman the C word, as if he's on Comedy Central, thinking that Wonder Woman is Ivanka Trump. How dare you? And Poison Ivy basically lifts up Ivy and this guy on a plant and uses the plant to throw this guy through the window in while gently places Ivy down. And it's like, well, we're working together, but it's because this guy's a misogynist troll, so he deserves physical abuse. It's like, okay. Like, why are they there? I generally, like, cringed. I cringed a little bit. Cringe. Yiz is telling me to feed the adorable cats. I will, Yiz. I will. I generally, like, do not understand the idea with Romanian politics. I mean, for example, I cared about two issues. I cared about the Romanian forest being completely wiped out the face of the map. And I've been caring about them for like 40 years. And recently, the Romanian president started talking about them. It's like, okay, finally we get to talk about the Romanian forests. And then it's like the gases in the Black Sea, which, again, they seem to be given away for free, like candy. It's like, okay, so what exactly do I care about? I mean, I'm looking at the fact, like, if heaven forbid there was ever a war in my country, let's say the Russians are invading, right? If the Russians are invading, I mean, when I pay my water bill, it's a French company. When I pay my phone bill, I think it's an American company. When I pay for the gas bill, it's a Russian company. Like, literally, every single thing that I pay when I look at my bills is foreign. So what exactly am I defending? Because the resources don't belong to the country. So if there was a war, why would I ever defend Romania? Like, I don't fucking care. Let the Austrian and the German banks defend Romania. Because why would I? Why would I? It's just. My birthday was on the 1st here, so it's a late reverse birthday present for you. Why? Thank you, Christimo. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Greta doesn't care about Romania. I mean, the forests are being plundered, and a lot of people say, well, it's corruption. Okay, and I agree. It's like the people in charge are corrupt, and it's very easy for an Austrian company to bribe the senator to look the other way as the forests are being plundered. But in my country, we punish both the person giving the corruption and the person taking the corruption. So while I do agree that the politicians that have took bribery should be punished, the companies that gave money for bribery should also be punished. Does that make sense? Like, if I go on the street and there's a police officer that stops me for speeding, and I go, listen, officer, we're both humans. Can we not fix this somehow? Can we not find another way to fix it? Wink, wink. And the police officer says, what do you mean? And I start poking and touching and massaging my wallet as if it's a nipple. Like, if I do that, the police officer can arrest me for trying to bribe him. Right? Because attempting bribery is also punishable by the law. So why is it that it's like only the people who takes it? Love the first episode of Harley, My Fellow Whites. Yeah, I actually made a video about My Fellow Whites. The reason it sticks out and it's unnatural to say My Fellow Whites is because white people don't talk this way. If you start going around My Fellow Whiting, you're going to be accused of being a Nazi. Like you can't. Like, you're going to get fired, is what I'm saying. So, I've yet to see a person outside of the far right talking about white people in a non-disparaging way. Like, the only time you're allowed to use whites, if you Google it, it's in negative connotations. So you're never going to have, like, a person going by fellow whites. Every time someone goes and does that, you're going to find out interesting things if you research their background. So, my fellow. That is like my fellow Romanians, my fellow Christians, even fellow men sounds bad, like my fellow men. My brothers, actually. No, my brothers. What are you doing, my brothers? Brother. Okay, right. Let's talk about more interesting things, because there's very interesting things happening in China right now. Apparently, the Chinese representatives are very, very quiet lately about the coronavirus, and their presence is lacking at important events such as the World Health Organization. And if you want to know more, you can go on the Twitter and you can follow this guy, Grums. Now, Grums is a Blizzard developer. I think he worked, I believe, on Warcraft and Starcraft, if I'm not mistaken. And when he's not talking about video games, he is talking about the situation. And this is not just him. Like, again, the mainstream media is starting to talk about it. Like, they're finally understanding, okay, maybe there is a bigger problem than the sniffles. I generally do not understand, like, how low IQ you need to be to believe that this is just like the sniffles. Like, when is the last time an entire city 3 times the size of London was shut down because of the sniffles? Like, even if you don't know anything about medicine, and I tried here explaining as much as I could about the situation. I did my best in order to educate people about misconceptions and the facts and the realities. And there's misconceptions from all sides, you know, like even people who want to create a panic based on this in order to get clickbait. You know, I deconstructed a couple of them. Like the virus is the same like AIDS or something like that, you know. But anyway, right, so my point is, even if you don't know anything about medicine, the fact that the Chinese government is taking this seriously, they're building hospitals, they're, you know, other nations are locking the borders with China. And you might say, well, racismus. It's like, yeah, but they're also Asian. They're the same race. Different ethnicity, but same race, I guess. It's like, it's a serious thing. And it's going to come here. You know, it's going to come in Europe. And all you can do is hope for the best and don't panic. You know, that's the most panicking thing. Like, trying to not panic in a panicky situation. But it's out of your hands. There's nothing you can do. The only thing you can do is to stock up. So Antifa Romania and other Romanians, buy hand sanitizer. Make sure you have it. Make sure you have masks. They don't really help, but, you know, maybe they give you some safety of mind. Gloves, I would also recommend, like, in the case that there's going to be an epidemic in Europe. Having some gloves when you go out, beautiful. Try to train yourself not to touch your eyes. Start taking vitamin D and other vitamins. Work out, exercise. Can you imagine how bad it would be if you work out and you exercise and then you find out that it's not going to be an epidemic in your town and you're like, God damn it, could have stood home and masturbate. But yet and behold, I went to the gym and worked out. No, I did, like, see, people think that I'm talking out of my ass. No, I'm taking vitamin D. Here you go, Detrical. 4,000 units. The thing with vitamin D, it's very important. It helps you, number one, for having a strong immune system. And number two, it also helps you for fertility purposes, right? So that when you go into a swimming pool, every woman in there gets pregnant. So the whole thing is like vitamin D requires sunlight in order to function. So during winter, when the sky is cloudy and it's very difficult to have access to sunlight, it's very good to take some vitamin D. I'm shilling Big Pharma. Well, I don't know. Okay, eat fish. I think what fish has vitamin D? I think salmon is the English translation, right? Like salmon. I think salmon might be the one. The one that's really greasy and disgusting. That's the one you need to eat. So start eating that. What vitamin D to buy? I don't know, man. Like I personally, it depends from country to country. The one I have is called Detrical, and 4,000 units is a lot. But the reason I take it is because I work during night shifts. You know, when I'm doing videos and because I sit in the dark a lot, I bet I'm having a very strong vitamin D deficiency. So that's why I take so much. But 2,000 units per day would be okay. Just take one as long as take an entire box, and when you finish it, just make a break until next year and then start taking them again. That's what I do. Where do I get my B12? From meat. Nom nom nom. Okay, let's see what else is here. The New York Times article. Yes, New York Times. NYT. Here we go. So, rapidly rising caseloads alarm researchers who fear the virus may make its way across the globe, but scientists cannot yet predict how many deaths it would result. Well, obviously, I mean, you can have a mutation that's positive, and let's say it gives a strain of the virus that doesn't provide symptoms, and people inoculate themselves against the actual strain. You can have a mutation that kills a lot of people, and then there's not enough infected to go around. Or you can have an infection which is even worse. And like it allows the virus to start mutating rapidly, and then there can be no more vaccine. So, that's one of the problems why the researchers say they can't predict. The Wuhan coronavirus, spreading from China, is likely to become a pandemic that circles the globe, according to many of the world's leading infectious disease experts. Okay, so it's not like the sniffles, right? It's not like Wire told me that we need to stop fighting against it. Yeah. The prospect is daunting. A pandemic, an ongoing epidemic on 2 or more continents, may well have global consequences despite the extraordinary travel restrictions and quarantines now imposed by China and other countries. Okay, so again, the quarantine, while it would be the most desirable outcome to prevent the virus from spreading, in reality, what it does is it slows down the spreading. You can't quarantine something that requires 2 weeks of an incubation period where you don't show symptoms, but you can infect others. Like it's next to impossible to quarantine that. So, what they're trying to do is to restrict the spreading until a vaccine can be done. And it's also the idea of restricting the spreading so that the hospitals can cope with the number of patients. Because if everyone would get sick tomorrow, then there wouldn't be any more hospital equipment or doctors in the world to fix the situation. So scientists do not know the lethality. The reason they do not know the lethality is because there are a small number of cases. And when I say small, I mean compared to the number of people that it has the potentiality to infect. So once it's going to go into the hundreds of thousands, then we're going to know the lethality. So it's uncertainty about the damage that the pandemic might cause, but there is growing consensus that the pathogen is readily transmitted between humans. Right, so the damage is going to be catastrophic if it actually becomes a pandemic and it maintains 10% KDA? I think it's 10% KDA right now, according to China. So think about it, Romania has a population of 20 million people. That would mean 2 million dead, right? That would be horrible. But here's the thing. It's like in the Black Plague and whatnot. The biggest problem is not just the people that die from the plague. It's also from the virus. It's also that when you lose such a big chunk of your population, it destabilizes the economy, it destabilizes the country, and it creates power struggles between different factions and different groups of people. And if you look at the Black Death, if I'm not mistaken, the people in Norway invaded Sweden. There was a Viking war there. Because the countries take advantage of the opportunity. They're like, oh, they lost a big number of their population. Now, I don't think we're going to see wars in 2020 because wars are incredibly expensive and they're counterproductive. But you will see countries that will try to take economic advantage over other nations who now are experiencing internal turmoil and problems. So, yeah, I mean, it's not going to be great. It's not just the virus. But I guess the good thing is the people who manage to survive all of the crises and calamities, it's going to be easier for them to find a job. It's going to be easier for them to find a place of work. That expression, it's always light after dark. Wuhan coronavirus is spreading more like influenza, which is highly transmissible than like a slow-moving cousin SARS and MERS. It's very transmissible, and it almost certainly is going to be a pandemic, says the Dr. Anthony S. Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. But will it be a catastrophe? Will it be catastrophic? I don't know. In the last 3 weeks, the number... And by the way, another thing, right? This is also important. Think about the idea that you're not supposed to panic, right? Like you're supposed to have a healthy immune system, and panicking does the opposite. If it would actually be dangerous, if it would actually become a pandemic with catastrophic consequences, it would be unprofessional from the mainstream media to actually report on that. It would be unethical from the scientists to report on that. Like that, those types of reportings would go to the hospitals, would go to the people in charge, would go to the people that are supposed to manage the situation. But it's very unlikely it will reach the general public because they don't want to create a panic. And even then, right? Like if you know for sure, if you were to know for sure that there is a massive pandemic coming next month and it's going to be really problematic in your town, like 10% of people are going to end up being hospitalized, 10 more percent are going to die, you know, how would you act? How would that information help you exactly? It's like, okay, I want to go to the mountains or I want to go into a bunker. It's like, okay, congratulations. You go into a bunker and you isolate yourself from everyone else. And in 1 year time, you arise from the bunker and everyone in your community is either immune or a healthy carrier. And now you're getting sick. You know, so it's like, no, there's nothing you can do against this. There really isn't. So, like, creating panic is counterproductive. Already live in a mountain. If it comes to my town, we're fucked. Yeah, I mean, you know, another problem with living in a mountain is that you're very far away from actual hospitals. So, various epidemiological models estimate that the real... Oh, and by the way, living in a mountain means it's a lot easier to quarantine you. Like, you need to think that the people who are issuing the quarantine, they also care about the economical damages. And they will be like, well, this little village in the mountain got sick. Quarantine it, you know. Oh, this London is now infected. It's like, oh, shit, do we really need to... We need to talk about quarantining. Let's talk about it before we do it. Various epidemiological models estimate that the real number of cases is 100,000 or even more. So exactly what I've been saying on my channel. While that expansion is not as rapid as the flu or the measles, it is an enormous leap beyond what SARS and MERS have done. When SARS was vanquished in July 2003 after spreading for 9 months, only 8,000 cases are confirmed. Well, Corona-chan already outdated that. Oh my god, look at this. This is, I believe, the Spanish flu. My god, this is so horrible. I generally, you know, like, it's easy to see something like this, and a lot of us are probably disconnected because you see a lot of movies and TV shows. And I think, like, your brain just sees the picture and you're like, well, you know, it's like seeing it in a movie. But this actually happened. And it's very difficult to imagine being in one of those hospital beds, surrounded by other sick people, and knowing that you came into contact with your wife, your children, your friends, and they don't know if they got the disease or not. They don't know if, you know, you managed to transmit it. Like, it's just like, God, I hope it never comes to pass. It's like, but anyway, right? So, the Spanish flu killed about 2.5% of its victims. And it infected so many people, and the medical care was much cruder than 20 to 50 million died. So yeah, like, like think about this, right? If 10% lethality rate for the coronavirus, and the Spanish flu had 2.5% lethality rate, the mortality rate for known cases of the Wuhan coronavirus has been running about 2%. Although that is likely to drop as more tests are done and more mild cases are found. Yeah, 2% according to the Chinese official government sources. You know, this is like listening to the USSR about Chernobyl and being like, oh yeah, it's just like a little explosion there. It's under control. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. Yeah, I think like the number of deaths recorded by the USSR regarding Chernobyl is like 10 or 1. I think it's like the helicopter crew that fell down, and the people who actually got uh, blown up by the initial explosion. But the radiation deaths and like all the cancers that came after, Russia never considered them to be part of the casualties. Um, let's see what the chat is saying. Batman has corona. No, like people who say Batman has corona haven't seen this meme. Like this meme is the best one that I have found on the internet. I couldn't stop laughing. Let me just whip it up again. I already showed it to the chat, I believe, yesterday. But it's a meme that is very funny in its simplicity. The only thing that it should add, like the only text that I would add on this meme would be simple as. That's it. Ah, dear. It's a bad burger, eh? How many hours of food can you store in your apartment? See, that's another question. Like, how many hours of food can you store? You can store a lot of hours of food if you go for non-perishable, like cans of fish and like cans of beans or whatever. Just go for like canned food. And if you go for canned food, I mean, you can store a lot. But the problem is, you still have to go out to take out the trash. And it's just like, can you imagine like living on canned fish for? By the way, if you want to do that, just make sure you also have some vegetables like lemons and stuff, so you don't get scurvy. But anyway, right? So an accurate estimate of the virus lethality will not be possible until certain kinds of studies can be done. Blood tests to see how many people have antibodies, household studies to learn how often it infects family members. Right. So here's another thing. Testing kits are difficult to come by because it's a new disease. People don't have the reagents required to create testing kits right now. They're going to be available in probably a couple of months, but it took the industry by surprise, as they would say it. So yeah, they are saying like what you need to do in order to prevent the infection. And I think they will also talk about, let's see, hygiene. Yeah. If anyone on the continent has the virus, I'm not sure the diagnostic systems are in place to detect it. And the guy is from Tropical Medicine and Hygiene, who consults with the World Health Organization. South Africa and Senegal could probably diagnose it. Nigeria and some other countries have asked the World Health Organization for the genetic material and training they need to perform the diagnostic takes, but this will take time. So exactly as I said, like it takes time in order to give them the proper equipment in order to diagnose the illness. So even if it spreads in some more unfortunate countries, like Nigeria in this case, they're not going to be able to detect it on time. And this affects the whole world, which is a problem. So it's bad, like that is the overall the thing of it. Oh yeah, India, like there's like nations that have a big conglomerate of people living next to each other. Those are the ones that are going to be strike the hardest. Let me find another one which I found about the coronavirus. I believe it was the one. Oh, here we go. So after the mainstream media called people racist and bigots for thinking that the disease came from bats, this one came, I believe, today, 3rd February, right? So this article came today, which says that the coronavirus did come from bats. Scientists revealed that the virus is 96% identical to the one found in the animal and is almost the same as SARS, as global death toll hit. So to remind people, there were a couple of individuals in China who got arrested for suggesting that there's a SARS outbreak. And the Chinese government then responded. It's like, well, they were trying to start a panic because it's not SARS, it's a coronavirus. And the ridiculousness is that it has the same symptoms. Like, it's literally the same symptoms. So you're basically, it's like me telling people there's a wild pit bull on the loose, and that, pit bull actually ends up killing people. And when I say, well, why did you constrain me from giving the information? It's like, well, it wasn't a pit bull, it was a German Shepherd. You're spreading fake news. It's like, okay. This is the thing. Like, if it's a person that's not medically trained, saying that it comes from SARS and it's not the coronavirus, why is that, really enough to silence someone? And it's the same thing. It's like, oh, it didn't come from bats, it came from snakes. It's like, what does it matter? It came from a wild animal that is not been grown the same way we grow cows and pigs, and facilities with an army of veterinarians that constantly check on them with diseases that we already know and we study. Like, it's very unlikely that a disease is going to come from a pig or a cow, because the moment it happens, like the moment we even know that there is a type of flu that is affecting pigs, we immediately call the entire pig population. Like in my country, millions of pigs were just slaughtered and burned because of the swine flu. Same with the birds. Like, there are systems in place that are there in order to try and prevent a disease that can infect the whole world. Because this is the thing. It's like, they keep talking about racism and nationality. It's like, this doesn't have borders. It doesn't have, nationality. It's going to kill people, regardless. Maybe some people are more protected than others. Like in the case when the Europeans went and infected the Indians. Yeah, some people might have more resistance than others. Fair enough, but it's still not pleasant knowing that the disease is in your town, because you don't know if you have the resistance regarding of the percentages and whatnot. So, yeah, the coronavirus is multicultural. It doesn't discriminate. Let's see. So, I love this one. It's like, there's a person asking in the chat, should we need guns to defend food and water? Okay, so the idea is like, if you have, if you live in a place where you stock up on resources and you watch too many TV shows and you think people are going to come and get you. Like, what you need to understand is that this epidemic, if it happens, and let's take the Spanish flu, it's over in a couple of months. Like, it's not going to be prolonged. It happens in your city. Like, I think Wuhan in a couple of months is going to come out of quarantine, because like the disease comes, it kills people in a couple of months, and then it goes away. It's not, something that can be prolonged for years, or, and when I say months, I mean 1 or 2 months. I don't mean 6 or 7. I think this is what happened with the Spanish flu. It came, started killing a bunch of people, and then all of a sudden there were no more cases, like overnight. So anyway, bats are likely to be the culprits. Using samples from 7 patients with severe pneumonia caused by the virus, scientists have found striking similarities to the viruses found in bats. Although scientists stress the animal source of the recent outbreak in China is yet to be officially declared, experts have confirmed a wholesale animal market in the city is to blame. Now, there's 2 possibilities. Number one, the virus can originate from the market, but it can also be a person that's sick and infected going to that market. Like maybe touching a lot of things in the market, especially when you have markets that allow you to test and try a product before buying it. So you pick up an apple, you look at it, and then you put it back, and you pick up another one. Well, that contaminates, especially now that we know that the virus can survive up to 5 days outside of the human body. So if an infected person touches an apple, well, for the next 5 days, that apple is going to be contaminated. So, just imagine what that can do if someone goes for an extensive, pleasurable shopping experience at one of these food markets. The human market was a hotspot with locals who could choose to buy their meat warm, meaning it had been slaughtered just moments prior. So the discovery definitely places the origin in China, but the high level of sequence similarity between blah blah blah. By the way, you wouldn't be able to do something like this in Europe, right? Like this is what pisses me off. It's like you're not allowed to criticize other cultures for the way they do things because it's racist. Listen here, you motherfucker, all right? We can't have this type of market in Europe. In my country, you can't have a market where there is a crate of live chickens, and when I purchase my meat, the person just slaughters the chicken in front of me and makes a dish. You can't have that. Why? Because of the European Union, right? So I pay taxes to the EU so that the EU makes legislation that forbids people from sacrificing live animals like that. Now, if I were to say that all cultures are equal and I shouldn't criticize China, then why the fuck is the EU taking my taxpayer money in order to enforce regulations when you're saying that the way the Chinese doing it are just the same? Why do we pay that extra money for some parasites to sit in an office with air conditioning and, be the legislative minds of the European Union when apparently, according to activists, the world can function just fine the way China does it? Really, really annoys me. Waste of my taxpayer money. Brexit was done so Brits could eat live bats. Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I think in Britain you can eat live bats after Brexit. The unwritten rule is that you can't criticize non-whites for anything. Yeah, like this is what pisses me off, and it's like as if it matters. Like if China was a white nation doing the exact same practices, you think people wouldn't criticize them? Like there is a reason we even have these systems in place, is because someone criticized us at one point. Like someone criticized our ancestors for the way they sold meat without testing it, without having a veterinarian inspecting it, without any of that. And by the way, all of these legislations are actually harmful to my country, because there is a lot of peasants who do not have the money to get all the stamps and all the approvals and all of that thing, and they are being placed out of business in favor of big corporations, like big companies that have big farms and whatnot. Like the little farmer that has that used to live on a self-sustaining system, that he's got like this little patch where he plants stuff that he only consumes for himself and his family. He's got like some chickens that produce eggs and he sells some on the market. He's got some milk, sells some on the market. Maybe he's got 2 pigs, one for himself, one to sell on the market. That type of person can't exist anymore, because he doesn't have the required money in order to get the veterinarian, get it approved. He can't kill the pig anymore himself. He has to take it to a slaughterhouse that's approved, that costs extra cash, So all of these regulations from the European Union hurt the people that are the most vulnerable. And the thing is, there used to be this criticism, because at one point we didn't do this, in our society we didn't have an army of veterinarians inspecting the meat and making sure that the meat that is in the market is purchasable. Like there was even a law, in medieval time in my country, punishing people for selling dog meat as lamb meat. So that problem existed even since back then. Like people who wanted to make a quick buck and cheat other people, they would say, well, this is lamb meat, and they would sell some dog meat instead. But my point is, like, all of these systems are in place because we got criticized. And if you're going to say that you're not allowed to criticize other nations, then fuck you. But it's not only that. It's not only that. You're not. It's not that you're not allowed to criticize other nations. You're not even allowed to say, all right, if these guys want to do their things, let's be like Star Trek, with the Prime Directive. Well, like, the idea that Star Trek is multicultural is baffling to me, because it's not. Star Trek used to have the Prime Directive. They would say, this is how a culture exists. Like, cultures, before they develop word travel, they wouldn't say that they're savage, but they would say they are primitive cultures, okay? So until you develop word travel, you're a primitive culture. Primitive cultures are prone to violence. They're not as enlightened as the members of Starfleet. Primitive cultures, they do warfare, they do, all these things that decent human beings don't do it. So they would look at a culture that's primitive and haven't discovered warp travel, and they would say, well, we're not going to interfere. We're going to isolate them. It's like building a wall around that planet. Whatever they want to do, they can do. We're not going to tell them right from wrong. We're not going to try to push our morals on them. It's like, no, it's their morality. They get to do whatever they want. That's Star Trek. That's a leftist show. And throughout the show, you have so many examples when a captain would break the Prime Directive and it would end up with negative results all the time, because that was like why it was called the Prime Directive. Unless they would discover the Omega module, and then the Prime Directive doesn't matter, right? Like, yeah, I mean, Starfleet was never about uplifting the primitives. It wasn't about integrating the primitives. It was about allowing the cultures that didn't discover warp travel to just be on their way. Now, once a society discovers warp travel, it was considered that they are so technologically advanced that they're going to be close to discovering replicators and other technologies that offer a life of plenty, so that you don't need any more conflict. However, there were still there were still cultures which, despite having discovered warp travel, their philosophy and their way of life was incompatible with the Federation. So you had to basically do a couple of things as a culture to be accepted in the Federation. So unless you did those things, you still wouldn't get integrated. You still wouldn't get a free pass. So, like, from the idea of a no border activist that, you know, like, criticizing other cultures is racist or whatever, Star Trek would be a far right show, because Star Trek would refuse to mingle or integrate with other cultures until they become enlightened. And even when they become enlightened and technologically advanced, they still wouldn't allow them to integrate in the Federation unless they make a couple of compromises. So, for example, if you do this today and you're like, okay, let's look at a nation. You know, you look at a nation on the world and you say, look, if you want to say that all cultures are equal, that's fine. Let's say the Aztecs existed, okay? Let's say the Aztecs exist today. And they believe in a sun god. They believe that human sacrifices are okay. You know, pulling the still beating heart out of a person is fine. And you would look at them and you'd say, yeah, that's kind of fucked up. You know, let's just build a wall. You know, if they want to live like that, it's fine. But let's not have them bring their customs and cultures here. You know, it would not be okay to be in Britain and see someone pull the still beating heart out of a person for their sun god. You know, it would be... I mean, we tolerate religions, but I think there should be a point. You know, like, all religions are equal, but one that involves human sacrifice is a little bit too much. If you did that, well, it's racist. Okay, but it's not like that's not how Starfleet would have done things. You know, like, Starfleet, the way they would do things would be to not interfere with the Aztecs, just allow them to do their thing until they are enlightened enough to join the rest of the enlightened people. Like, the thing that I'm saying is that Star Trek would differentiate between primitive and non-primitive, which is why they have the Prime Directive. So I went on a tangent. The whole Star Trek happens because Vulcan broke the Prime Directive. So did the Enterprise all the time. They've been breaking it all the time. Now, yeah, the thing with Star Trek is that there is so much contradictory lore, it's not funny, but I know they retconned it so that once a scientist which discovered warp travel did his experiment, a Vulcan research ship detected the signature, and that's when the Vulcans introduced themselves. So, no, it's not canon that the Vulcans broke the Prime Directive. There are cases where Starfleet does break the Prime Directive, but it usually comes with negative consequences. Like in the Voyager, there is this case where they try to steal some technology and it almost explodes their ship. So, but to be honest, like I generally do not like Star Trek because it's so easy to destroy their entire culture. Like, if I was the Borg, you know, if I got to control the Borg, the way I would destroy Starfleet wouldn't be through attacking it. The way I would destroy Starfleet would be to approach the people from the Federation and say, we want to integrate into your society. And they would do like everything that needs to be done in order for Starfleet to accept the Borg in. And you have to understand that a drone, a single Borg drone, has the knowledge of millions of previous species. Like, in their head, they're already having like this Wikipedia of millions of other species in the galaxy. And we're talking about a single drone, right? And then you also have the drone being much more stronger and more powerful than an average human. So when the drones are deciding to go into Starfleet and go into their society, they would excel at anything they do. They would be the best engineers, they would be the best inventors, they would be the best Starfleet officers. So, in the course of 10 or 20 years, all of the drones would manage to get themselves into very high political positions. They would become admirals, they would become in charge of planetary defense, they would become in charge of upgrading or creating new ship models. So, anyone that would complain, anyone that would say anything negative, you would accuse them of racism and you would shut them up. And now you have like the Borg controlling every single important, strategically important part of Starfleet, of the Federation. And then you take over. And when you take over, like, they have access to the planetary defense system. They can shut them down. They create numerous parts that go on spaceships. They can sabotage. They, like, there's no way of stopping against that. And honestly, the thing with Star Trek and is that when they created the Borg, they wanted to create this really cool, alien species that's and they hyped it up. But they hyped it up so much that if the Borg wouldn't suffer from fighting against enemies that have plot armor, there's no way to stop them. Like, there really is. Like, you're talking about a species which not only has access to millions of other civilizations. Like, imagine this, like an entire civilization. All of its knowledge exists in the mind of a drone. And we're talking about millions of them. So they have all this technology. If they manage to capture someone, they can assimilate all that information. So if they capture a single, like, let's say they captured the Enterprise, they will know everything Picard does. They would know everything that the security officer knows, like all the tactics from the Federation, all of that they would know. They're like mechanical Tyranids, I would say. Instead of, and not, unlike the Tyranids, which can only change their biology, the Borg can change their technology and biology because they wanted to capture this species from liquid space in order to change their biology, to integrate that biology into the Borg. So if they would capture a Tyranid, they could also change and, their skin and whatnot. So it's like, there's no way of fighting against it. The idea that the Starfleet defeated the Borg is only because of plot armor. Like, let me give you an example. They came up with the bullshit that you can shoot a drone, and if you change your phaser frequency, you're damaging it. Like, otherwise it adapts. So this is like moronic in itself, because I don't know why the Borg doesn't make a defense for all the frequencies, or just, completely bypass the idea of having to adapt to that particular phaser. Just make an armor or something that, but whatever. Let's say that is the case, right? Like, you have a finite number of frequencies and you change it, right? So that they don't adapt. But every single episode, the Borg starts at point zero, where they've never been shot with a phaser. Like, the moment you shoot a drone with a phaser, the entire Borg collective adapts to that frequency. So how many frequencies you'd have to change? Like, there's a finite number. It's a question of time, because at one point you went through all the frequencies. But every single episode it restarts. Every single episode it resets. So the Borg is zero adaptability, and as they keep fighting in drones, they keep adapting. And but anyway, right? So you had a similar take on the Necromorph. Well, the thing that the Necromorphs are powerful, because a lot of people say, well, the Tyranids could defeat the Necromorphs, right? The way the Necromorph work is that they attack a civilization before it gets the ability to defend itself. Like, before it even develops warp travel, before it develops the weapons necessary, the Necromorphs would destroy that society. So you don't even have the weapons to defend yourself. And secondly, if, let's say, the Tyranids would invade the galaxy or whatever, then the Brethren Moon would just hide. They would just go somewhere else into the void and wait for the threat to pass. Like, they don't have to engage. That's my idea. Like, the reason the Necromorph are powerful is not because they have more weapons and more capabilities than other creatures like the Flood. It's because they attack before you're prepared. And they also create division in your society. Like they send these artifacts, like they don't even need to be there, they just send these pylons, these artifacts, which creates the own members of society to be at each other throats, to cause civil war. They drive the population insane. The Brethren Moon aren't appearing until the late phases of the invasion, so that's why I think the Brethren Moon are unstoppable, because you would never have the weapons and technology required to fight them off. And if you did, they would have battled. Like there's nothing for them to gain in engaging into open conflict. So, Tyranids do that too. No, they don't do that. They actually invade the galaxy through different hives, right? Like they have like these tentacles, these tendrils that have different names, like Hive Fleet Leviathan and whatnot. Like you can predict where they're coming from. The Tyranids would adjust. The Brethren Moon. Well, they already have a pylon on your planet way before your civilization even started inventing the wheel. So, Tyranids have gene stealers subverting the population. Yeah, that is correct. But again, the gene stealers need to arrive on the planet, or people need to arrive at a place where the gene stealers are. With the necromorphs, the pylon that creates the insanity was there from the beginning. To be honest, like the Imperium, the Empire with the Imperium of Man would be good against fighting the Brethren Moon, because they would see the artifact, they would see the pylon, and they would say, okay, this is some Xenos filth, let's destroy it. Like, see, this is why I love the 40k lore. Like, the Imperium isn't evil for the sake of being evil. Like, think about the idea of the Brethren Moon, right? Like, they find this obelisk which promises infinite energy and infinite knowledge, and the Empire would be like, right, this is Xenos tech, Xenos filth, just destroy it, no questions asked. Like, this is fascinating to me, because there are indeed certain creatures in lore that would work in subversion, and for the Imperium of Man, subversion doesn't really work. It's like how the Tau, through subversion, managed to conquer worlds. It's like they start giving away alien technology that's a lot better than what the Imperium has. And people slowly start liking the Tau, but the official Imperium policy is like, okay, what is this? A coffee maker. Who made it? A Xenon filth. Okay, kill the person who bought it, destroy the coffee maker, and anyone who even came into contact and knew about the purchase should also be burned at the stake. And it's a way that guarantees that in a hostile galaxy where there are races that try to kill the Imperium of Man, the Imperium already has like ways of dealing with it. Read Gaunt's Ghosts, best Warhammer 40k novel ever. I should. The Borg were made to be communists at its most extreme point. Yeah, a lot of people consider Starfleet to be communist. I don't. Like, the Borg are communists. Like, think about it. Even in Starfleet, you have this military technology, and I'm not even going to go into the Picard's Vidyards and the bullshit, but in the case of the Borg, everyone is equal. They have no captain, they have no ranks, they have no individuality. The only thing that pisses me off is the fact that they introduced the Borg Queen, and I think like the Borg Queen was introduced just to have a way to defeat them. But without the Borg Queen, if you would just have it like that, it would actually be communism. Like a complete destruction of the self. Everyone is equal. Everyone is, getting the same treatment. Every single drone can do whatever other drone can do. It's like the Borg is the definition of communism. It's a federated state of planets, not communism. Yeah, I agree. Like, the Federation is definitely not communist. And even Starfleet is not communist, so. But no, I mean, and one of the things that pisses me off is that Marx's idea, like Karl Marx's idea, that the only reason we have crime is because of poverty, is what pisses me off, because the USSR was saying that nonsense. And it's not true, because you have crimes of passion, you have crimes of ego, like some people just want more. They want to... Like, they want power. They want power over other people, for example. There are individuals who feel good to be the boss. And they might commit crimes, like forgery or blackmailing or whatever, in order to just, get in a better position. It's not that they're lacking things. It's not that they're having a lifestyle of poverty that they do this. They just want more. It's this innate desire. And this is why capitalism works. It's because it takes this desire that some men do in order to be greedy, to have more. And it channels it in productive ways to actually create things in a society. It rewards people who are greedy. But in socialism, the idea is that you're going to reach a point where people go to work and they work as hard as possible, and then they go into this warehouse where you have everything, and they just pick what they need. So all it takes is for a couple of people who go to work and they don't work as hard as possible, because they're like, well, if I work hard, I get the same amount of money than if I'm a little bit lazy, which kind of sets the mood for other people. I noticed this when you're in a classroom and your colleagues are lazy, they don't care about the classes, they really are there in order to just, do the course and go home. It's not the same like when you have a couple of very, very motivated people that are very well at that class, and everyone who goes there are like, well, I best not make an ass of myself and not know the answer to these common questions. It's like the idea of having a couple of people that are lazy and they're not being punished for being lazy is what lowers the bar. And other people, well, if that guy is lazy and like, I know he could do more, I know he could do better, but he doesn't, and he doesn't get punished, then why should I? Why should I do more than him? Because if I do more than him, I'm not really recognized in any way. I'm not going to get a medal. And it's like what happened in Soviet Russia. You saw people which would decorate machinery. Like, this was ridiculous, but they would have like medals, and they wouldn't be able to give them to a worker, because that would mean that worker is not equal. Like, it would mean that there is a better worker, which means that everyone else is worse. So what they would do is that they would put the medal on the machinery in a factory. Right? Like, they would honor the machine with a medal for producing over the quota or anything. Just and the idea of going in a warehouse and taking only what you need is ridiculous, because all it takes is some people who go into that warehouse and take more than they need. Why? Because they want to. So it only takes like a small number of people to completely mess up the entire system. The machine was doing its part. Can you imagine if you actually have a machine in its factory that produces a lot more than all the other machinery, and you give it a medal, and then you're the guy who breaks that machinery? Can you imagine like what would happen? Hey V, what happened to your cat videos? Here is some money for whatever you want to spend on. Yeah, so I removed the cat videos because of the COPPA regulations. Apparently animals can be considered to be non-COPPA compliant. I haven't heard of anyone getting fined for violating COPPA rules yet. But I just don't want to risk it, so... anyway, it's been an hour. I'm really starving now, so thank you guys for watching. I will release a video about Commandos HD, on my Lack of Entertainment channel, probably in an hour or two. It's a very interesting video. I loved the game Commandos when I was a kid, and now that they made the remake, I will look at it and analyze it. So see you guys there. Take it easy.